Welcome to Milk Market Tidbit for the September federal milk marketing data that the USDA released, and I have to admit that it came out a little bit faster than I thought I would get it. I'm recording this on Monday, October the 14th. Okay, here's the big overview. September statistical uniform prices were actually up about $1.21, which was 23.08 across the country, again weighted for the number of cows in each of the orders. Now, PPDs are starting to be a little bit negative, and as class 3 is higher than class 4, that'll be the case. And there is a definite change from depooling class 4 to depooling class 3. And again, as you know, the value of each of those changes, that's going to kind of change that. On the federal milk marketing order, I think month over month, milk was down, and part of that was depooling. But also, I think production was actually down just a little bit. Percent fat was up, and again, amazingly, I think about 5 ticks. So here are our statistical uniform prices. You know, once you get to the southeast, it's around $25 plus or minus a little bit, with Florida at 26. You know, a lot of 22s here, midsection, and then a little bit higher in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and order 1. I like to look at the change of the price. Remember that class 3 came up $2.68. So you're going to see Minnesota, Wisconsin, which is a very high percent class 3, up $2.24, while class 1 was up just a little bit. So that's why in the southeast we're only up 38.40 cents. But across the nation, about a $1.21 increase in the milk price. So what's going to happen to depooling? Again, we use a 75-cent window here as to when you will not be depooling. So for a little while here, we'll probably depool class 3, and then we'll start depooling class 4 again in the first of the year. This is a table of the actual difference between the two. This is a real-time graph that I grabbed just a few minutes ago, but it does look like November, December, and part into January may not be any depooling. This slide has the change in daily milk production, and this is really hard to interpret because you kind of look at it and say overall production was only 85% of last month, and you know that that's not true. That's all got to do with a bunch of depooling. But when I look at this, I look at the Northeast, which was just about 99. The Mid-Atlantic was about 99. Georgia is around 99. Some of these are pretty small, but again, let's go look at the change in class 4. California's was up 53 ticks, Northwest up 11, Texas up 38. So you can't even look at these federal orders because they change so much of the depooling. My rule of thumb is anything over 5, and so that only leaves us here with about 4 orders that we could actually use to make an assessment of. Stand back and look at the kind of the bigger picture. Again, the overall production looks like it came down, which is not true. Class 3 came down a lot, which is all depooling, and class 4 went up. So overall, month over month, USDA is normally around 99.6% September over August, and so we're down usually just a little bit. When I look at the data, my best guess is going to be 99% month over month, which is going to give us 18 billion pounds of milk, and that's a 1% decrease year over year. Now I want just a little bit of wiggle room in that, so I'll go from 98.5 to 99.5 kind of as my range of where I think production will come in, because there's so much depooling, it's really hard to look at this data. If we do look at the daily production, this is our estimate, down just a little bit from last month, and that's going to be down just a little bit from a year ago. It's hard to look at the overall capacity. I would just kind of throw these in for completion here. This was our highest utilization of class 4 on a daily basis, on a pound basis, and you can see where the depooling significantly reduced. We're about 61% of our total capacity. I'm hoping that we get a couple months where nothing is depooled and we can actually figure out where we are in total capacity. Class 3 is kind of the inverse of that. We depooled a lot, so now we're only 40% of this capacity. So if a new cheese plant come online, we simply wouldn't know it because it was probably depooled. Overall, Class 1 was up a little bit. It was 26 and change. Last month we're 31. A little bit of a seasonal increase, but the question is if you pull out a bunch of Class 3, then whatever remains has got to go up in a percentage. And so some of this increase as a percentage basis of the federal milk could just be a change in overall utilization. But again, big Class 1 is going to be the Southeast, and Minnesota, Wisconsin's like less than 10% at this point. Fat was really strong. Last month we're 407, we're 412, so we came up 5 ticks. And just look at some of these numbers, 427 in the Northwest, 415 in the Northeast, so everybody is basically above 4 except Arizona and Florida. So very strong fat. That also means we're going to need less cows to make the same amount of products because what we need for products is basically components and not fluid milk. Protein was also continued to be strong, 334 up in the Northwest. The lowest is always the Northeast at 320, but again, very strong protein numbers, around 32, 33 all the way across the nation. So we got these statistical uniform prices actually over the weekend. I was surprised to see them come in on Sunday. We're going to have a global dairy trade this next week, which is going to help us figure out some of the non-fat dry milk prices. National Dairy Sales Report will be a day late. Today is a bank holiday. The markets are not closed. It's going to be a little while before we get some hardcore data, which is actually going to be the milk production report on the 21st, which will be the next milk market tidbit.